Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our coverage of the ongoing civil war taking place inside the former state of Ethiopia. And today, I have a wide range of topics to cover. But first and foremost, I wanted to talk about and I'll get to some battlefield coverage here shortly. Not a lot on that front. Obviously, it continues. But first and foremost, I've talked about in previous videos that we would continue to see the fragmentation of the former state of Ethiopia, and in fact, we would start to see more of an Amharan-centric armed forces. Now, specifically in regards to some of its paramilitary units that have risen up during the course of this civil war. And one of those forces, a rather very large force that even existed prior to the current civil war, and that force would be Fano. Again, originating as a youth movement, has since developed into a key fighting force for both leadership elements within the Amharan region. Answering to, in certain cases, certain Amharan regional leaders. And during the course of this conflict, specifically in operations within the vicinity of Kobo, Weldia, Wachale, Dese, Kombolcha, we have in fact seen elements of Fano turn on the Abiy loyalist formations, better known as the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, the Ethiopian Army, and in certain cases, even elements of the regime security force, the Republican Guard. And again, we in fact have intel that would indicate that at least a few ENDF officers were actually killed by members of Fano, to include a field grade leader, meaning a person who, within the rank of colonel, lieutenant colonel, in fact, was killed by elements of the Fano organization. And again, one of the prime reasons for many of the battlefield defeats that we have observed during this conflict within the side of the Abiy loyalists, the Amhara regional forces, Fano, was lack of unity of command. And a lot of these forces, especially Fano, operate independently, autonomously, and in some cases, again, if they don't like the operational decision making that is going on possibly within the ENDF, then again, at times we have seen those forces, meaning Fano, and other paramilitary organizations, there are even smaller ones that kind of fall within the umbrella of these groups, that have turned on the ENDF itself. And again, we've not just seen that. Obviously, we've even seen Amharan regional forces fighting elements of the Eritrean army when the Eritrean army was attempting its five-finger discount foraging methods in the Amhara region. And obviously, the Eritrean army is very well known for that. That is partial in how the Eritrean army is compensated by going into other people's homes, domiciles, businesses, and taking those things as compensation. But anyway, that's another story unto itself. But again, we're starting now to see talk within the NISS, the National Internal Security Services, of the Abiy loyalist formations, the intelligence services, actively discussing that Fano, that other Amharan regional paramilitary forces have in fact become too powerful. And the time may be now in which those forces either need to be removed and or absorbed into a regional, a more regulated regional force. And as we know, it would appear, at least on the surface, Fano and some of these other paramilitary organizations, and again, they're really parallel armies. These forces number thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of armed individuals who operate rather autonomously, especially right now in the western Tigray region and other areas. We continue to see elements of Fano operating. And during the course of the occupation of the Tigray region, Abiy Ahmed turned Fano and other Amhara regional militia groups loose inside of the Tigray region to rape, plunder, and pillage. And that is what caused the punitive invasion of the Tigrayan Defense Forces into the Amhara region after that occurred. But again, right now it would seem that Fano and some of these other paramilitary formations in the Amhara region have really worn out their welcome, especially when they started to attack and in some cases kill both officers and enlisted personnel of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. So again, that infighting continues, and that fragmentation of the Amhara region from at times the Abiy Ahmed loyalist forces. So obviously, members of the Amhara region have their own political and power aspirations, and as we know, the information that is coming out of Addis Ababa, also known as Finfinne, is that Abiy Ahmed has no intent to relinquish power. And in fact, he has talked about and discussed openly that he intends to stay in power quite possibly for decades to come. And obviously, if you are in the Amhara region, or any other region of the former state of Ethiopia, that may concern you, having that person in power for that length of time. To compound that very issue, in which we were just talking about, in terms of the length that Abiy Ahmed is entertaining in terms of the time that he is going to remain in power, we're starting to see the expansion, the continued expansion of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, or the Abiy loyalist forces. Furthermore, more specifically, the Republican Guard formations, the formations that that Abiy Ahmed actually commands himself. These are regime security forces, much like the Iraqi Republican Guard, the Syrian Republican Guard. Again, usually when you hear the Republican Guard attached to an armed formation, especially in a despotic regime, usually those formations are designed to keep the strong man in power. And in fact, right now we're starting to see the expansion, or the continued expansion, of Abiy Ahmed's Republican Guard and some of those security forces that he has direct control over. Again, these are forces that could be a parallel force to protect him from a possible coup d'etat, or even some of these regional forces such as Fano. But again, the sheer size and scope of the growth of the Ethiopian national defense budget is kind of mind-boggling, considering the vast array of socioeconomic problems that exist in the former state of Ethiopia, and considering the fact that Abiy Ahmed is now looking at spending almost, I've heard by one count, almost $2 billion on his personal security and expanding of the Abiy loyalist formations, the ENDF forces. And again, if you looked at the defense spending prior to the onset of hostilities, the ENDF, the total defense budget of Ethiopia was about $500 million. So again, quite a bit of an expansion, and obviously a lot of that is due to the civil war and the armed conflict that was taking place. And ironically enough, that armed conflict was started by none other than Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki. What a better way to expand your personal security, your regime security, when you have a armed conflict in your country. That is the prime opportunity to continue to solidify power and expand those regime security forces that continue to expand, i.e., the Republican Guard and some other units that are very, very loyal to Abiy Ahmed. But again, that is the information that we have right now in terms of some of the talking points that I wanted to discuss, namely what is happening with Fano, these paramilitary organizations in the Amhara region, and then obviously the expansion of these regime security forces in Addis Ababa and loyal to Abiy Ahmed. Now, in terms of battlefield reports, we continue to see fighting in the Afar region. Again, as I talked about prior, this operation is more or less designed to root out Afar regional militia units that have been harrying across the Tigray border, and it does not appear, at least on the surface, to be a operation designed to seize control of vast areas of territory. But again, we're watching that very closely, and we continue to watch the operation in western Tigray. And on one last point, another area of intel, of chatter that we are hearing, it appears that there is now talk, active talk, that the United States may have decided that Isaias Afwerki needs to be removed from power. And obviously, if Isaias Afwerki was not in power in Eritrea, there's a high probability that the current conflict that we're now seeing in the former state of Ethiopia, in the dissolution of Ethiopia, would not have occurred if not for the efforts of Isaias Afwerki. And again, I think from the point of from CIA, from U.S. intelligence agencies, from the State Department, is that Isaias Afwerki is now really just more trouble than he is worth, and probably has exceeded his shelf life, and is going to need to be disposed of in some fashion or another. But again, I talked about in previous episodes in which we could possibly see a move by the TDF on Eritrea to collapse that regime and bring an end to that despotic regime, and we're still watching that, and we still think that is a possible option for the TDF at some point in time, quite possibly with some external support, but we'll see how that goes. Have a good day, everybody.